To move item 8.2 on our agenda up to be considered next.
Yes.
So
Moved and seconded. Call the question, all in favor, opposed, motion carried. Kim, are you ready?
I'm ready, but I think Alex is even more ready.
Oh, there you go. Hello, Alex.
Hi, good afternoon. Alex Mackay, planner with the Squamish-Lillooet Regional District. So we're on agenda item 8.2. If you want to follow along, it's on page 160 of your agenda package. This is an updated report that is intended to replace the report that was presented to the EAD on April 9th. This is primarily to update the recommendations section, and there is also a small amount of new information concerning the application that was made in 2019 for the subject property. And I will speak to both of those. So this report is regarding an application to create a new comprehensive development zone on the west side of the highway across from the existing subdivision of Wedgwood's Estates. It's for a 2.42 hectare portion of District Lot 2247. The new comprehensive development zone would enable the development of 6 duplex buildings for a total of 12 duplex units. It is the intention for 4 of the duplex units to be non-market housing with resale restrictions, and the remaining 8 units to be market housing. In addition to the non-market housing, the proponent is proposing a significant number of community benefits, which I will speak to further into my presentation. Importantly, under recently amended provisions to the Local Government Act, we're prohibited from holding public hearings on zoning amendment applications where the bylaw is consistent with the official community plan and the purpose of the bylaw is for residential development. Notice has been provided as per the Local Government Act requirements. We advertised in the Peak newspaper, posted information on the SLRD website, and also put that information out through SLRD social media. Public submissions that were received will be presented to the board at the time of second reading, along with agency referral comments. And I do just want to briefly note that we received 12 pieces of public correspondence on this application and bylaw, and all 12 of them were in support. Okay, so I'll just briefly speak to the application from 2019. These lands were the subject of a previous application for non-market housing several years ago. And staff understand that following the EAD meeting, there was a request for a little bit of additional information around both that application and what the concerns were that were raised at that point in time. So the 2019 application was for a significantly more intensive non-market residential use on the west side of District Lot 2247. At first reading, there were a total of 16 proposed rental apartments and 36 non-market townhomes proposed at that point in time. And the proposal also included 12 new single-family market lots in the existing subdivision of Wedgwood's Estates on the east side of the highway. At that point in time, the board expressed some concerns around impacts to traffic. The professional reporting that was produced indicated minimal impacts to level of service, with all movements to be level C or better, and that was based on 72 proposed units. They did those calculations. So the new proposal as of today, the current proposal before you, is approximately, or is only 16.7% of that unit count. And so it's therefore anticipated to have a very minimal impact, with 6 additional trips generated in the morning peak and 8 in the afternoon peak. And those trips would be split approximately 70% traveling south to Whistler and 30% traveling north to Pemberton. Other concerns we heard in 2019 were around impacts to services in the RMOW. This new proposal is significantly smaller in scale. Just a couple points of note. So in terms of waste diversion, the applicant or the proponent and developer will be required to create waste diversion storage on the property, and the strata would have waste pickup established as a service. Other facilities that were raised previously were the library and Meadow Park. It's worth noting that usage and pricing of those facilities is at the discretion of the facilities, but for example, the library is currently open and currently open to all residents in BC. So anyone can get a library card regardless of whether or not they're a Whistler resident, provided they're a BC resident. The other concern we heard previously was around the ongoing management of the proposed non-market housing. So in 2019, there were 52 non-market units proposed. The current proposal includes 4 non-market units, so significantly smaller in scale. Initial sales would be managed by the developer with oversight from the SLRD. And options for ongoing management, there's a couple of different paths we could pursue moving forward. It could include engaging a third-party company or the WHA on a contract basis as needed. Turnover is anticipated to be very low due to the small number of units and the desirability of those units. In terms of ongoing work, it is recognized that there will be a need for managing a wait list on an ongoing basis, but that's work that could be undertaken by planning and development services. So I'll leave that there and just turn back to the application before you now. So this new application proposes to address the need for family-oriented, smaller scale housing and non-market family housing in the region by way of the 12 duplex units. As I stated previously, 4 of them would be non-market for purchase housing units. Those would be located on one of 3 new proposed parcels. They would be subject to covenants which would restrict both ownership and pricing. The proposed form of the covenant would be similar to what has been done in Whistler under the WHA, for example, for the Rainbow neighborhood. Those homes are contemplated to be 1,600 to 1,800 square feet. And the 8 market for purchase housing units are contemplated to range in size between 2,000 and 2,200 square feet. In terms of the covenant approach, the non-market units would be subject to a Section 219 housing agreement, which would ensure affordability in perpetuity with a fixed appreciation rate. The ownership and occupancy of the housing would be restricted to individuals who are currently employed on a full-time basis in the SLRD, RMOW, or Village of Pemberton, or retired individuals that meet certain eligibility criteria. The pricing for the units is proposed to be determined in discussion with the applicant prior to adoption of the bylaw, and that's just to recognize that there are fluctuations in contracting and materials pricing. So we will leave that to a little bit later in the process. In terms of transportation, there are proposed upgrades to the existing highway, including acceleration and deceleration lanes as needed, and there is quite a bit of land base and space there to accommodate those changes. All of the proposed lots would have frontage onto Highway 99, but there would be a landscape buffer screening them from the highway, and they would all be accessed via an internal driveway system. The applicant is also proposing that each unit will be equipped with a level 2 EV charger located in the private garage, which is aligned with SLRD climate and sustainability goals and objectives. In addition, staff are recommending, and I'll speak to this a little bit in more detail later on, but staff are recommending that some funds be set aside to pay for a potential future transit stop if that comes to fruition. Finally, this proposed development will enable the future closure of the existing access road to the reservoir, which is something that's supported by the Ministry of Transportation and Transit, and will provide a safer access to that in perpetuity. In terms of servicing, the proposed duplexes would be serviced by way of shared wells and a septic disposal field, which would be managed by the Strata Corporation. Okay, so I'll just speak quickly to the professional reporting. There is an engineering report appended to the report that's before you today. There are also a number of professional reports that were prepared for the subject property back in 2019, and the applicant is in the process of updating those as needed. Those will be brought forward in a revised form at the time of second reading, but staff don't anticipate any significant changes to that reporting. So that would be the environmental reporting for the property, archaeological reporting, geotechnical, and transportation reporting. Okay, so I just want to take a few minutes and focus on the community benefits package and the SLRD community amenity contributions policy. So under the board policy, the recommended minimum community amenity contribution based on the creation of 2 new market multifamily lots is $22,000. The third lot is exempt from that as it's non-market housing as per the board policy. So the amenity package being proposed by the applicant vastly exceeds those required contributions. So to begin with, under financial contributions, they are proposing up to $55,000 to the SLRD for the Electoral Area C Recreational Facilities Reserve Fund. And that's where staff are recommending that a portion of that funding in the amount of $25,000 be set aside for a period of 10 years in order to cover the cost of installing an all-weather transit shelter. After 10 years, if the funds are not used for a transit shelter, they will then revert back to that recreational facilities reserve fund. And in addition, if there is a transit shelter and there are additional funds left over, those will also revert to the fund. The applicant has made a financial commitment of $100,000 for work and improvements to the Sea to Sky Trail, based on conversations with the SLRD Parks and Trails coordinator. In terms of construction or provision of tangible assets, there are the non-market units, and it's worth noting that under the OCP and the CAC policy, we have a requirement for 15% of units in new multifamily developments for affordable housing, but the proponent in this case is proposing that a full third of the units, or 33%, be dedicated to non-market and affordable housing. The applicant will design and construct a play area as well as part of the common property. And then turning to in-kind contributions. The applicant is proposing that the full remainder of District Lot 2247, which is approximately 120 hectares as shown on the location plan, be donated to the SLRD, which will enable the SLRD to determine any future use of that site. And then finally, SROW for trail access. There's a small portion of the Kill Me Thrill Me mountain bike trail that is on the existing private property and will continue to be on private property that will be managed by the strata in the future. So this will provide public access there in perpetuity. So all of those amenities will be provided by way of a development agreement, which will be presented under a separate cover. Okay, and then just quickly turning to how this proposal is aligned with existing SLRD policies and bylaws. This proposal is well aligned with the SLRD strategic priority areas for 2024 through 2026 as follows. It supports community well-being and livability, and it supports climate action and sustainability. This proposal also works toward addressing the identified need of 142 new units in electoral area C, as per the recently completed housing need and demand study. We also heard during the Housing Need and Demand Study community engagement that there's a strong desire from the community for more diverse housing forms in Area C, including small-scale multi-unit homes. This proposal is also aligned with the regional growth strategy, in particular Goal 3, which is generate a range of quality affordable housing, and the following strategic directions. Generate an adequate supply of quality affordable housing and a diversity of housing types for employees, seniors, and people in need in the region. Adopt as appropriate deed restricted price, resale control, rent geared to income, and other options to increase the supply of affordable housing and create housing that remains affordable in perpetuity. This proposed development is adjacent to Wedgwood's estates, provides more affordable family-oriented housing options, and is located in relatively close proximity to employment opportunities. The proposal is also aligned with the existing official community plan. And then just briefly to turn to how this will land in the zoning bylaw. The subject lands are currently zoned CD1, which is Comprehensive Development 1, Wedgwood's Estates. They would be rezoned to CD2, which is Comprehensive Development 2, and that would include duplex as a permitted use. So staff are recommending that the subject bylaw be given first reading and that the referrals process be initiated. I'm happy to take questions, and you have Director Needham there with you as well, and I believe the proponent in the room. Thank you.
Yeah, Alex, excuse me. I'll start this off. Yeah, I find this to be a very, very practical, exciting opportunity. And I think the thing that amazes me the most is the donation of the lands. I mean, that is something that the regional district, we don't own very much land throughout the area. And this is a huge amount of land that can be utilized for all kinds of recreation forever. So I think it's just a very good deal. The only concern I guess I have is with the designation of the 4 units. Correct me if I'm wrong in that number, but that would be set aside for staff from Whistler, Pemberton, the SLRD would have a sort of a special dibs on the thing. And I just think that they should be on the open market, so to speak. If staff from those 3 areas or retired people from those 3 areas, if they want to apply for them, then you have like a lottery draw or whatever, how you figure that out. But I don't think that I just, in my mind, I just find it's a bit of a conflict that we are asking the developer to set aside accommodation for our staff and whatnot. And I know it's tough for our staff to find accommodation and all that stuff, but that applies to everybody. And for us to give them a leg up on the rest of the population, I just don't think that's right. I think this just needs to be a fair way of doing it. They're on the open market, you put your name in, and if your name's drawn out of the hat, fine and dandy. Thanks. But anyways, I fully support this operation. Alex.
Thank you. I'll just speak briefly to the point you just made. I do want to clarify, it's not strictly for local government staff. It's for people employed in the region. So you could be working for a private business and you would be able to apply for that non-market housing in the same way that you're able to apply for WHA housing if you work for a private business within the RMOW and you meet certain conditions.
Okay, thank you for that. Chris.
Yeah, a few questions. One, when I looked at our map and I understand the housing needs work and so on, but this, to my understanding, is not an area that's targeted for densification. So I'm just trying to, I wonder if staff can speak to how we rationalize putting additional density in an area that my understanding is not an area for additional density, and that we would look for that sort of additional housing in an area targeted for additional density rather than here per se, or am I misunderstanding something?
Thank you through the chair. I can speak to that a little bit and perhaps Director Needham may wish to add to that as well. That portion of District Lot 2247 is designated as service residential under the regional growth strategy. And the rural residential designation that exists on that land under the official community plan does contemplate some more gentle forms of density, such as duplex use. It doesn't have that intensive level of density that was proposed under the previous application where it's apartments and a lot of townhomes, but that smaller scale, more gentle density form would be considered appropriate by staff in this context.
Okay, and then related to that, and my recollection of concerns I had when I've previously seen iterations of this was, concern is this is driving density that is sort of car dependent, and I heard there's, maybe if there's a service, we will fund transit, but as opposed to here's a plan and here's how it works with transit from the get-go. I'm just wondering if staff can speak to how we are thinking or why we are assuming sort of some future transit stop might be acceptable as opposed to a solution of here's how it works from not car dependent from the start.
Sure, thank you through the chair. I think that most owners that are living in that area would likely have vehicles. There is the provision for EV charging infrastructure that the applicant has committed to. I think I'll let Director Needham speak to the transit piece a little bit more, but as staff understand it, there is some ongoing work, maybe at the provincial level where there might be future transit, but I'm not sure exactly where that has landed. I know many years ago when I spoke to them, there was possibly going to be a transit stop at Wedgwoods, but I'll leave it there and let Director Needham add anything further.
Yeah,
speak to that. There is a commuter bus that goes right past that site, so it would be up to BC Transit to determine whether adding an extra stop in that location would be appropriate for them.
I guess sort of what I'm trying to get at though is there's a difference between theoretically someone could use transit as opposed to we are approving things where transit is the plan from the get-go, and this is how it works from transit from the start, as opposed to, you know, from the start, the plan is people are in cars and maybe some place down the road, they move to a bus.
I guess my take on that, excuse me. Every time these things come up, say like this project here, it always comes back to putting more cars on the road. We're putting minimal cars on the road here. How many is Squamish putting on the road? How many is Pemberton putting on the road? How many is Whistler putting on the road? It's a roadblock from Whistler to Squamish every weekend, some days even in the middle of the week. So, you know, cars, that's not an issue in my mind. We do in the area that we live in, you know, our transit will get better as time goes on, hopefully. And these, all these facilities, these buildings will have EV chargers in. So hopefully they'll all have electric vehicles. I just think that that's, just like I say, this comes up every time there's something being built other than in, you know, Squamish, Whistler, Pemberton. But with all the development that's gone on right here in Pemberton, Whistler, obviously Squamish, you know how many vehicles you've put on the road. So putting another 10 or 15 vehicles on the road is a minor, it means nothing. And they may all be EVs. I'll leave it at that. Oh, I'm sorry. Jenna's sitting here right beside me and I look right by her. Jenna first and then we go Tony and Katrina. And then Vivian.
Thank you, through the chair. I appreciate both my colleagues' comments on this. And I think it's not so much about the cars that are getting put on the road, but more so the option to have access to transit if people want it. And so there's already a bus going by. And so I'm just curious why we wouldn't make the requirement for a transit stop part of the rezoning if there's already cash being allocated. And so then there's a transit stop for a bus that already exists. Like, it's not a question of whether transit exists or not. The transit is there. It just needs somewhere to stop.
Yeah, I can speak to that through the chair. BC Transit has said it's generally not best practice to build bus stops where there isn't service. They're open to vandalism, etc., and it confuses people because they think that a bus might be coming when there's actually no bus coming.
Sorry, through the chair, though, there is service. You just acknowledge that there's a bus that goes from one to the other, and there's Wedgwoods on the east side of the highway that already exists. And so if we put in a bus stop, there's a bus service with people who could use that bus.
Yeah, through the chair, there is a service, but there is no prescribed stop by BC Transit there yet. So that would have to be something that BC Transit reviews and agrees to, and I'm not sure we would want to tie that to this application because that might take years for them to determine that they could have another stop.
Thank you.
Can I ask it?
Yeah, I'll just say,
On that note, just on her transit note, can I ask a question? Through the chair, can you make a development plan contingent, one of the requirements is to secure transit service? Like we do that for all kinds of different, we put all kinds of different criteria on something. Can you do that with transit service?
that's the,
Question to me.
I don't know who it's to. I'm happy for anyone to answer it.
And perhaps the comparable is Britannia Beach, like we've required as part of their land development agreement that they build transit infrastructure before having an agreement with BC Transit in place. I would suspect that those would get advanced at the same time. And so I'm just curious why something similar couldn't be used in this.
Yeah, through the chair. Britannia Beach is a little different. They built a lay-by, but they donated money towards the future construction of a shelter. And again, they were told, you know, best practices to build the shelter once there's a service. So to Director Crompton's question, it's difficult when a development application ties itself to a third-party entity and their decision-making process. It can really slow things down, which is why typically with developments, we would take money for shelters, construction of laybys, et cetera, until a service is actually approved. And then once it's approved, we can quickly move to put up a shelter and the lay-by for those buses.
But technically possible to,
Yeah, I just don't know that it would be best practice to tie one development to a third-party entity's decision-making process, because that can really drag things out for who knows how long.
Great, thank you, John.
I was just gonna say that this whole thing about transit and where we put buildings is a bit of a circular argument. Yeah, we go to BC Transit, so we want a transit system in sea to sky. Well, we've got to do a study, and the study comes back and says, well, when there's more people, then we'll put transit in. And now we're sitting here perhaps saying, well, we can't put more people there because we haven't got transit yet.
Exactly.
So I think this is this is zoned to accommodate the kind of construction that's being proposed. It's adjacent to it, becomes part of a community that already exists. And I think if it's in place, then that will help us develop the transit system through to sea to sky.
Katrina?
Well, one thing I do know about that bus is that it's full when it goes by Wedgwood.
Yeah.
So that is a problem because people can't get on it because the service isn't big enough. And so, I mean, I hear exactly what's being said here, but what I'm curious about is if there's any ability to, we can't have transit without funding and it will be a slow process without the funding. So is there any way, and I don't mean to direct it at you, Director Mack, but I know Area C has their funding has been reduced over the years. And I'm wondering if there's a way that rather than, I understand the infrastructure is important, but if there's a way that perhaps more funding could be allocated to regional transit, and that helps our advocacy and because a bus shelter is not going to get us regional transit as quickly as we need it. So
But to your point of Area C funding, Area C was putting in same funding as you and a little what we're doing for a period of time. And then we did a survey, which your mayor wanted to have done. And when the results of the survey come back and they weren't to his liking, then he wasn't too happy with that. Well, that's kind of too bad. But the fact of the matter is, Area C doesn't have one bus stop in our area. Well, we got this one if we get it. But right now, in this area here, Mount Airy, we have, there's no bus stops.
I know, I
So
live in there.
in order for somebody,
If you've got a bus that's coming past there that's full,
yeah.
then clearly the message to BC Transit is we need
You
another
need
bus.
two. Yeah, exactly.
So we get another bus, we employ another driver, and we encourage more people to use transit. There's people hitchhiking right now because they can't get on the bus.
Yeah.
Yes, let's get to,
I need some help with some basic math here. Can I ask my question?
Yes,
We have 6 duplexes, is that correct?
pardon me?
12 units. 6 duplexes for a total of 12 units. So far, so good. 4 of them are non-market, 4 of the duplexes are non-market, right? Is that wrong? Because I'm seeing different references, like on this page, it says 8 of the proposed duplex units will be market housing. I just want to get clear, how many units, so Alex is gonna tell me, okay?
Yeah, thank you through the chair. So 6 buildings, each has 2 units.
correct?
So 12 units in total.
Yeah.
2 buildings would be non-market, so 4 units in total are non-market.
Right.
The other 4 buildings, market housing, and that's 8 units in total, so 12.
And we're calling those non-market, right?
Four non-market, 4 non-market, so that would be the
duplexes.
affordable covenanted housing, and 8 units as market housing.
We've only got 12 units, haven't we?
2 duplexes, 4 units.
12 units in total, yes.
Okay, okay, so I had those flipped in my mind. Well then, how many, so there's 4 non-market units being 2 duplexes, correct?
Correct, yes.
That's an absolutely crazy amount of pressure from the staff and people. First of all, I like the previous application because it had a lot more non-market housing, but this is still better than nothing. But when I think about the competition for those few non-market units, first of all, do those get sold as a half a duplex each? Is that how that works? Or do they get sold as a duplex and that duplex owner then controls the other half? I just, or is that not decided yet? I'm just, the logistics, I'm thinking about this.
Yeah, thank you through the chair. We do need to still work on some of the logistics with the proponent, but they would be individually, they'd be sold individually and strata managed. So it wouldn't be someone purchasing both, one building, both units, they would be sold separately.
So I think we should sort of take off some of the, I thought, why are we developing non-market housing for people that are retired in the corridor? I just didn't think that was a necessary population to try and house. And then I thought, so I'm agreeing with something that Director Mack said earlier, that we definitely want to have this lower cost in perpetuity housing available, but I'm not sure that I like assigning it any which way other than something that's open to people in the SLRD and some kind of, and you're talking about a lottery or something, those details to be developed later. Is that, am I on track with that?
Yes, so thank you through the chair. It is the intent of staff to bring forward a much more detailed approach and a draft of the housing agreement at second reading.
All right, then I'll just hold off on any other questions. I was thinking,
Thanks for the report. Why can't this site connect with Wedgwood wastewater services?
Thank you through the chair. Just give me one moment. They're not under I think the provincial requirements, they're not able to extend their service to units that are not part of their existing strata corporation. So they can't provide those services to a separate strata entity.
And there's no way to ask the strata to take them in?
So it's my understanding that there has not been support from that in the past from the existing strata corporation. Yes. So I mean, the proponents in the room, he may be able to speak to that further, but I believe that that's the case, that there isn't an appetite from the existing strata to incorporate this new proposed strata.
Are septic systems something that we've been working hard to get rid of septic systems? Are septic systems something that we're typically using in new builds in new neighborhoods?
So thank you through the chair. I mean, they're definitely common in many of the areas of the SLRD where there are a lot of other unserviced properties. If this is given first reading today, it will be going out for referrals, and we will be hearing back, I'm sure, from Vancouver Coastal Health on the proposed approach. In general, if there is a long-term plan for management, both for the proposed water system and the septic fields, which there is in this case because they would become strata operated entities. So there is a way in which that will be managed and funded in perpetuity as part of the development. I don't know if Director Needham has anything further to add on that. Thank you.
Thank you, through the chair. I don't have anything else.
I would think just talking for Area C, the majority of Area C does not have a sewer system. We do not have a water system. People are either on wells or surface water or whatever, and everybody has a septic tank, septic field, right? So, and
I
new
guess-
houses
I guess
are
my-
being built with that.
My comment would be, most of those places are not directly adjacent to sewerage. Most of them are very old, very few of them are brand new.
No, I disagree with that.
But brand new in a neighborhood, anyway, I can keep that for comment.
Because all the new construction, Jack, that's going on in Area C, that's what they're dealing with.
There was a previous proposal on for the east side of Highway 99 on some remainder lands. Does this proposal say anything about that land?
Thank you. So through the chair, this proposal, if it was to move forward, will represent the completion of development for all of District Lot 2247. There is no current proposal for adding estate lots on the east side of the highway. Which,
And what-
yes, as you mentioned, that in the 2019 proposal, that was a portion of it was going to be adding 12 more strata lots on Lot 108. But that's not proposed any longer.
Was there any, we had talked previously about the idea of having them all be market units. And then having a larger amenity that could be contributed to constructing housing in a place that may be more appropriate, better serviced by transit. Did you spend any time or energy pursuing that, or has the proponent spent any time or energy understanding that option?
At this time, no. This is what's being presented to you today is the application as it was put forward to the SLRD. I can let potentially the proponent could answer your question, or Director Needham, I think, was a little bit more well versed in the application from 2019.
Yeah, through the chair. With this application, like no other sites were considered because within the SLRD, there really aren't, we don't have a lot of sites. We're really challenged for land. And with respect to affordable housing and collecting monies versus collecting the actual constructed housing, it's always better to get the constructed housing. Typically, when the money is collected, it's never going to be the same amount as it takes to construct the actual housing. And so you can see this even with the RMOW DCCs that have been collected over time. It's never enough to actually build a significant amount of housing because the amount collected is so minimal compared to what's required to build. So yeah, I'll leave it at that.
I think there's lots of examples that run exactly the opposite. If you're putting equity into a large apartment building, you could get more units than you can get here, and they'd be right in the middle of Pemberton. And there's a lot of options that I think could be pursued and that I frankly find interesting. I guess you've answered how the affordable house. At what point in the process will you answer the question about how the valuation will be made? I think you said was it a development permit was the time when that valuation is actually made? We know how much value is being created through this upzoning?
Thank you. Through the chair. Are you speaking to the pricing for the non-market units?
Yeah.
Yes. Okay, so it is the intention of staff to bring that forward prior to consideration of adoption. So not development permits, but prior to consideration of adoption for the zoning amendment. And the proponent has committed to working with a consultant prior to adoption to develop an appropriate kind of pricing scheme for the proposed units.
And do you have a ballpark on the value of that? It seems like it's a very large part of the amenity is the valuation of the affordable housing.
Thank you through the chair. So I don't at this time unless the proponent feels comfortable putting a number to it.
Thank you very much.
Carmen,
Thank you. I'm gonna pick up on there's lots to like here. I think I'm struggling with the location of the affordable housing, which I think I'm sort of picking out of some other comments, but when something like this comes forward, where if this was to proceed as presented, has some funds there for transit should it ever appear, does staff automatically engage with BC Transit at that point to say, hey, there's these funds, we've got this development that's happening, how do we work this in to trigger it, or do we, like, who initiates that? And that's, I guess, the question. I understand the rationale, and I know that if they even greenlight that there's a stop here, it might take 10 months before it actually appears on a schedule and is actionable, which gives you time to construct it. But so I'm not too caught up on that piece, but just how do we actually realize a stop here should something should that come to fruition? How do we drive that, and does that need to be included in the direction, or is that implied by accepting the recommendation of force? Whoever wants to.
I can take, or sure, go ahead.
Carol, direct.
Okay, thank you through the chair. I was just going to say, I think that should come as a recommendation or part of the direction from the board that will enable staff to undertake that, to initiate those conversations with BC Transit.
yeah,
I think it's also important to note that through the referral process, we will refer this application to the Ministry of Transportation and Transit. So that will go before them. They're going to see that there is this unit here, and they're going to see the package that it does include the bus shelter money.
So,
Tony.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Me? Or-
Yeah.
No,
Tony,
okay.
no.
There's been a couple of comments made about this being the wrong place for affordable housing, and affordable housing should be in the center of a town. When this came up in 2019, and it didn't even make first reading, it didn't get past first reading, I got all kinds of emails especially from people living in Whistler, from young people. One I remember was an assistant, a dental assistant, whatever the correct term is for that. Another person was a teaching assistant in Whistler Secondary School. And their comment was that they came to Whistler as young people, they came as ski bunnies or whatever you call that, whatever that term is these days. And they met somebody and decided to hang around, and they found a basement apartment, maybe something like that. And now they want to have kids, or they've got a child, and they're crammed into some sort of space. And they cannot afford to buy anything or rent anything decent in Whistler. And so having something just down the road in somewhere like Westwood would be just wonderful, and not a great distance to drive, but enable them to stay in an area that they've grown to love and to stay and live in the sea of sky. So to say that this is the wrong place for affordable housing, I think, quite frankly, is nonsense.
So I've continued my question, which is, so there will be an intersection design needed and approval for the access to the highway. And I just want to make sure that the transit pieces are integral to that. I think that having one stop on one side of the highway doesn't necessarily service the area with transit, because if you're taking the return trip, you have to get dropped off on the other side of the highway. So I think the pedestrian movements across this area become more critical. And I want to make sure this stuff is forefront of this, because in the affordability discussion, we rightly put housing right there. If this is below market, and the only option to be here is to participate in your work and all the rest of it is that you have to 100% have a vehicle to function here, then I don't know that we're doing a service to our work here responsibly. So my concern is that we get those things baked in as early as possible. I get that there's another third party which we're working on to make the transit service work better on those pieces, but at this critical piece, I want to make sure that this is enough. And the dollar amount here doesn't actually realize transit service because it's only on the one side. So do we have something for the other side? How do these things all link together so that you can't only access this going northbound? That doesn't help you get to work and back in a day. So are we looking at this holistically? How do we ensure that that happens? If not tying the entirety of this responsibility to this development, because there's more people on the other side of the road than this. So I want to make sure it happens. I just don't, happy to see that this is here, but I want to really make sure that we're kind of leading with this. Obviously, people will choose to get around how they decide, but I think this is an opportunity to actually realize a functioning stop here, not try to wedge it in after the fact with the needed crosswalks and pedestrian movements and so on.
Okay, Katrina, and then Jess, and then Sal, and then Jen.
Yeah, Dr. Herford sort of touched on my question, because is if it's the movement of people back and forth across the highway from a safety perspective, what's the process by crosswalks required? Because if we're really going to support future provision of regional transit, there will be more people going across the highway, and they will be going, we won't have a stop on just one. We may have a stop on just one side. So how does that, I don't know how that works, that we get a crosswalk. And if so, we know that location, from a safety point of view, having a crosswalk there, what does that actually look like?
Well, that's up to highways, but
That's what
it's no different when you get in crosswalks on Portage here, right? We worked for years to get those. And it's something you have to deal with. Yes.
I might have missed it, but how many beds is gonna be how many rooms in each unit? Touch on that, I don't see that in the report at all, is that?
Yeah, thank you through the chair. That level of detailed design has not been done yet, but I would say at that size, the proposed square footage, it would be between 3 and 4 bedrooms in each unit.
Right. Okay, so that it makes me even more concerned about the pressure that's going to put on the Pemberton and Whistler fire services. I can speak for Whistler, we're running with way less trucks than we have. So what's the game plan with that? Is there going to be more money sent to both fire services?
Thank you through the chair. Just one moment. I'm just trying to pull it up in the report, but it is in the proposed development, is in the under the existing fire service area agreement with the RMOW. But no, there is not additional funding
I know that there's
contemplated.
an agreement, but it doesn't say anything about additional funds being allocated. So.
Kim.
It's on a per unit basis, the agreement, so it would be.
Per unit or per bed?
Per
If we're looking at 3 to 4 beds per unit, and we get them all filled, that's a huge increase to that population.
Yeah, it would be per new unit.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. What about accessible units? Has that been discussed? Because if you're looking at having retirement seniors in there, then you have to have accessible units. So are there any being allocated towards that?
Thank you through the chair. So as I just stated, the detailed design work has not been done at this point in time, just because we're at the initial zoning amendment stage. But I certainly think I agree that is important, and it's something that will be looked at as we continue to work on those details.
Okay, great, thank you.
So
when the strata was done on the east side, was there ever any provision for transit stop?
Yeah, thank you through the chair. There is, as I understand it, an area for a bus lay-by on the east side of the highway. There is not a transit shelter there, though. that's on Riverside Drive.
Okay, thank you. I guess just looking at this transit issue, you've already got a place for a bus stop on the other side. So to me, it would make sense. We've allocated funding to hire a policy analyst and to use some of that community growing fund for Sea to Sky transit. That position could actually look at this issue, but not only for that stop, but for other places that are gonna have, because the bus is only gonna go down one side and come up the other side throughout the electoral areas, and there's no stops. There's no lights. So how is that gonna take place? Because by rights, you're either gonna have to go underground with a tunnel for people to walk through, or you can go up high, or you put lights. So whether it's on the east side or the west side, and it looks like you already got one on the east side, we don't need one on this side. You already got it. It's how do you get the people across either way? Because the majority of the people are on the east side.
Thank you. The chair, I think we're in a very unique position here with this proposal being done, but we already have a neighborhood on the other side that has had some requests for reaching for transit, but specifically the Pemberton commuter. As Director Mike Nightingale has said, the problem has been a few things, one of them being just capacity to be able to service that and the demand and the bus being full. Right now, you can ask for feasibility to prove the need. The need is proven by looking at how full those buses are consistently on a day-to-day basis. I also think, and we would have to go back and bring this forward. And one thing is that conversation about adding stops is constant in our advocacy when it comes to BC Transit. It comes down to cost. It comes down to the ability to service it. And I believe too, if you look at Emerald, for example, there's stops on either side and people are running across the highway, but that's a 60 zone. And so Mott would come back, I believe, in their conversation with BC Transit, with SLRD, about how that would be accommodated. There's certain regulations that need to be met in order to have a bus stop for someone who's going to essentially jaywalk versus having a whole bunch of considerations. And then that can happen separately or can be something to direct staff is not needed. It's definitely a conversation ongoing. Advocacy.
Janet.
Thank you, through the chair. A few questions. The first one, just on that, can I just confirm that a referral to Ministry of Transportation would consider the safety of transit access across the highway? That's something that we would expect MOT to review.
Whether we like it or not.
Nodding her head.
She's nodding her head.
Yeah, I can.
So I wasn't sure if she had more to say other than nodding.
I can. Yes, thank you through the chair. So when we send them the referral, it will include the draft bylaw. It will also include the full detailed staff report that speaks to the potential for a transit stop. So I would anticipate they'll look at it holistically. And we can always kind of go back and forth with them as well if their referral doesn't address that initially. Referral comments, I should say.
Okay, and then I wonder if we also refer to BC Transit directly. BC Transit is an arm's length organization. So while MOT does a great job, they are not BC Transit. So would a referral also go to BC Transit?
Thank you through the chair. It's not necessarily standard practice, but we absolutely could in this case make that referral.
Great, thank you for that clarity. I was also curious, the proposal as is that the non-market and the market units would be delivered as two separate stratas. And then some of the common area would be allocated. I don't know if that's a third strata that everybody's party to, or if it's like shared across the two stratas. But I guess I'm just curious, why is it two separate stratas for the market and the non-market? That feels weird.
Yes, thank you through the chair. That's not absolutely set in stone, but it's because of the unit entitlements and because the valuation would be different for the two different unit types. So it's to make it more equitable. And as you stated, everything, so the two separate stratas would be responsible for the buildings under each of those, but everything else would be held in common. So whether that's the servicing, like the septic fields, common areas, the waste diversion, storage, and mail building, that would all be held in common by both strata corporations.
Okay, I'll have to give that some thought. I feel like that's different practice than what we typically apply, but I'm happy to entertain it. And then finally, my question was on the non-market piece, and I appreciate that. I think in the staff report, at least I read this intentionally, that it's designed as or delivered as non-market, not necessarily affordable housing. And so can we just clarify what it is that we're trying to work towards with the applicant, or what the applicant is proposing here, if it's actually as per our definition of 30% below market or 30% of net income, or is it actually just some portion of below market?
Thank you through the chair. As I stated, we don't have firm numbers at this point in time, but we would be looking to work toward what we have done in other areas, which is that 30%. Yes, we'll be looking at that. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay.
Chris,
Yeah, just a few things. The duplex unit count seem to talk to the number, in relation to the number of lots, which is dependent on the current subdivision. Is more subdivision in the future possible, and would that sort of automatically allow for more units because the zoning is tied to the units per lot, or how would that work? Basically, would it have to come back to the board if in the future new lots were required, or could there be like just a subdivision application through staff which could open up a whole bunch more units?
Thank you through the chair. So the way the zoning bylaw is drafted at this point in time, it would preclude, prevent any further subdivision. As well, all of the remainder lands are proposed to be donated to the SLRD. So it would be at the SLRD's discretion what the future use of those lands are.
Okay, and then my colleague mentioned 12 lots on the east side, which aren't part of this, but there's nothing in this that, or anywhere that stops a future application for those 12 lots or whatever happens in the future.
Thank you. So yes, those were part of a previous proposal. It is my understanding, based on discussions with the applicant, that there is no intention to pursue further subdivision on the east side any longer.
Okay, two more questions for now. I noticed there's no home business, home office, any of that sort of employment use or opportunity. Is there a reason for that?
Thank you for that through the chair. I will take a look at that. No, there is no specific reason for that, and I agree there should be some home office provisions for the duplexes.
Okay, and then the last question for now, this proposed donation of land, do we understand what the tax implications would be, and then the potential value? Like, is this something which actually becomes a burden to us, or is this a good thing, or it's indifferent, or how do we understand whether or not this is actually a gift or it's not something we would want?
Thank you through the chair. I think I'll leave that one to Director Needham.
Yeah, through the chair, the SLRD would not be subject to that tax burden, but there may be some insurance issues that would arise. So that would be something that may be covered by our kind of global insurance policy, or it may be that we have to add a rider to it.
But for clarity, we would lose revenue we're getting now because we don't, so the tax is being paid on it, and maybe that's an insignificant amount. But also then is there, like, is this and I'm not clear of the geography, but is this the side of the mountain and you couldn't really do anything with it, or is there some future potential or value, or like, what is this piece of land?
Yeah, through the chair. The land is steep. And it's got some geotechnical issues, most likely in parts of it. And so I wouldn't see it being very developable, which is probably why the developer didn't propose to develop it as part of which in the first place.
It's nice habitat.
Thank you.
Okay, any other questions, comments?
Motion to move the two recommendations?
Yeah.
Okay, so moved.
Second.
Okay, moved and seconded. Call the question, all in favor? Oh, right.
Yeah, I'm, to be honest, not there yet. I remember the prior discussions and for me, I recall having concerns about sort of building a more car first housing, which, from my perspective, doesn't really meet our affordability aspirations, our climate aspirations, our sort of many aspirations we have. I think, you know, I do recall conversations of, if there is a reason to do this, can the proponent buy some non-market or below market apartments in Pemberton or Whistler? And is that maybe a more beneficial way to proceed with this? It sounds like there's some questions in terms of whether this donated land makes sense. I think there's some things to work out in terms of employment opportunity, especially if we don't want this to be a car first development. Some complications around transit and so on. So for me, this hasn't really moved in terms of some of the fundamental issues that I recall from the last time to be able to support it. Thank you.
Go ahead.
Thank you, through the chair. I will be supporting the motion on the floor. I think that this is ready to go out for referral, and I look forward to hearing back from a number of the agencies on some fairly substantive outstanding questions, I think. I would like to clarify that I would like to see a referral to BC Transit in addition to Ministry of Transportation, with a focus on as well working with the proponent to getting bus shelters built in time with this development. We can do our back end of working with BC Transit to get more buses on the road, but the SLRD through different funding sources has put funding to help fill the gap between some of the funding shortfalls in order to get regional transit as far as possible without the province there. And so I think anything and everything with densification along this corridor has to go hand in hand with trying to advance regional transit. And then as much information as we can get early on, I feel a little bit uncomfortable about the affordability components not coming to us before adoption. That feels too late in the process, given that that is a huge portion of what is actually being delivered by the proponent in this application. And so some confirmation prior to third reading for me would likely be required. And then also some glimmers on how we would actually structure that work in second reading. I think just given that this is a small number of units, that actually doing any form of waitlist management is unnecessary, especially if it's going to be for purchase over time. I just think that's from speaking from some recent experience on the Housing Squamish Society board, waitlists are hairy beasts. And so if there's going to be limited turnover with only 4 units, that I think just doing a lottery system with some really clear criteria is probably the cleanest way to go. But I think fleshing that out and putting some further thought into it for the board to wrestle with next time we see this would be worthwhile, so that we can iron out those details sooner rather than later and not go too far down the process if it's not going to be supportable in the long run. But those are the key issues for me at this time, and thanks to staff and the proponent for the continued work.
Jack?
There's so many unanswered questions in this proposal that are sort of core for me making a decision on it, and they are around what do we mean by affordable and how are we going to manage it? And I wonder if there aren't better uses of the amenity itself. Healthcare, like there's a long list of impacts that this development has that I think the residents who live there could enjoy an amenity contribution. And so I'll support the resolution because I agree with Director Stoner that there's a lot of answers that will come back to us through the process, but the fact that the existing residents of Wedgwoods aren't going to enjoy the full benefit of the amenity is somewhat concerning for me. And I wonder if there's a better way to just frame this whole thing that would require us to understand the value of the amenity, which I simply don't. And I don't feel like it's been presented in any serious way. So I have concerns, but I'll support the resolution because I'd like to see answers.
Yeah, I echo that. I'm teeter-tottering on this, but I think there's, if we get it back, when we get it back, I hope that all the questions that we've asked are answered.
Okay. Moved in second, go ahead.
To propose an amendment that that a draft housing agreement and be provided when this comes back for second reading. And as well as that BC Transit be added in the referral list. And if it's seconded, I'll speak to it.
Maybe that's two separate motions.
I will do them as two separate motions. So we'll start with the draft housing agreement for next time it's before us. I just think this is a key piece. I've heard it from my colleagues and I heard it from internal to myself. And I think that it can be a high level draft, the points we're hoping to include in a draft in a housing agreement. I think this will get at the affordability piece. We can really understand what is being provided here, and I think it is core to my decision. And I think it's important that we articulate our desires as formally as possible through motions to direct our staff's work, not exclusively through comments. So I'm just trying to crystallize that here.
I appreciate the intent of my colleague bringing this amendment forward, but a housing agreement is typically like a very structured policy document that you would then get the proponent to enter into with a potential purchaser. And so I don't know if the housing agreement is actually what we're looking for, if it's more so just the like concepts behind what the affordability are. But
Terms of housing agreement, maybe it'd be a way to amend that or something.
Yeah, I just want to make sure that we are actually being clear with that.
And I think we have to realize we're just at the start of this process.
Yeah.
By giving it first reading, we're just moving it to the next step.
My intent here, and I'm open to amending this amendment, is to ensure that when it does come back, that it meets our expectations as a group. And I think that if we are silent on this issue, maybe I haven't articulated it as in the best way, but I think if we're silent on this issue and it comes back and it doesn't meet our requirements, then yes, this whole process we're at the start of could get derailed because we didn't address it early enough and fulsomely enough. So that's what I'm trying to do here with this, not delay anything, quite the opposite.
Alex, you have a comment?
Yes, just a quick comment. Thank you, through the chair. That is absolutely the intention of staff. We do typically bring drafts of those legal documents at the time of second reading. That's what's stated in the report as well, is that we'll be working on that housing agreement, the right of first refusal, all of the covenant documents, and creating a draft form for board consideration at second reading. Thank you.
Okay, then so then that makes it innocuous, but it has been moved and seconded. So do you want to put it in the motion, or what do we do procedurally?
Did you not have a second amendment?
Yeah, but I want to deal with the first one. I'm just wondering where the first one goes. If that was
the first one second.
I didn't understand, none of the answers we had in the process was that was included in a next step. So I included it in this resolution. So if that was, because it was in the report, that was implied in the overall staff recommendation, I can track it, or do you just vote on it and put it in there in the motion itself?
Vote on the amendment?
Did somebody second your amendment?
Yes, it was moved
Oh,
and second.
Yeah.
Since we're open, my suggestion would be to vote and.
So the idea would be to vote, defeat the motion.
Yeah, it's just the amendment.
Why, if defeating the motion achieves the same thing as supporting the motion, so why don't we just support the motion? Would we advocate for, like 6 1/2 dozen other in my perspective. Makes me feel better if it's supported, but you know.
Well, I think that staff's already said to us that all this information will be coming back for second reading anyway, so.
I'm unclear. I don't think it says second reading in here. It just says that it will come back to us. I'm just sorry, I'm going through this, but it just says that we will see a housing agreement. It doesn't specifically say it's gonna come back at second reading. Is that correct?
That's what Alex just, had just said that it would.
Well, I just don't see it here. But that's fine. I will trust her.
Do you want to clarify that, Alex?
Thank you through the chair. I'm just trying to find the page I was just on, but it does state that in the report. So unfortunately can't find the page in front of me at the moment.
I'll withdraw the motion if that's.
It does say that on page 2. Just before the relevant policies, it says public submissions will be presented to the board at the time of second reading along with agency referral.
Okay, yeah, there it is.
That's not the same as it. I'm gonna withdraw the motion. I think we've had enough of a discussion here that it'll get done, but I don't feel that what I saw read had second reading, but that's fine. So then the second piece would be, and I can just withdraw my motion. That's okay. That keeps us on side, or do we need to vote on it? I'm going to.
Let's vote on it.
I'd have to find out if you can give me, but you have to finish this before you can go to another motion, don't you?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay, so let's
question.
let's vote on this and defeat the motion, and then we'll start over again.
I think sorry, if I can, before we call this, I don't know that I think that we're getting additional clarity if we support it, so I'll be supporting the motion. I encourage others to do so.
I think overall for this discussion for staff clarity, having it specified now that it's been back and forth would help. Yeah. For the CAO's ability to move forward.
So what we're having.
I still feel that this, as much as I was considering withdrawing it, if we have to vote on it, it adds additional clarity. What I've heard and what I've read did not give me the confidence that was a clear expectation at second reading. So I think that supporting this is the path forward here. It gives us additional clarity that some of us, if hoping the majority of us maybe would benefit from, but it would be clearer direction to staff. So when it comes for second reading, it's a clear expectation, because that's my expectation.
So I'm inclined to defeat this, but because I trust Alex, and she just said it was going to be there, so I trust what she says. But
So does
excuse me, I don't think you know. Our CAO just suggested it would be helpful to staff if we supported this, so I will support it.
Yeah.
I'll just encourage the table to not suggest that other members of the table do not trust the staff who work for this organization. I think around this table, we all have a tremendous amount of trust in the staff who work at the SLRD.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Call the question. All in favor? Opposed? Motion carried. Now we go.
So then
I thought we have another motion.
Another piece was that. So the additional amendment is that BC Transit be included in the referral agency list.
That was in your first one.
I broke it into two pieces so they can be debated separately, because that was
It was two separate
I
motions.
thought the original motion was both.
no, it wasn't seconded until I split it into two pieces.
I'll second that.
Okay.
Okay, moved and seconded. Call the question. All in favor? Opposed? Motion carried.
So Can I speak to the?
On the main motion.
Main motion, now that we've amended it. So,
Okay.
I have a question that informs a potential
I move forward.
amendment.
Sorry. We just, lunch services staff, are you clear on what just happened?
Sorry, just wanted clarity on who opposed the second motion of regarding BC Transit.
Everybody did.
Unanimously.
Okay, okay, thank you. Thanks.
We, through the chair to staff, is it, do we ever express a valuation estimate of the amenity? We do that in the municipality. I'm wondering if we would do that here. I'm just wondering if there's a different approach.
So what are you saying here?
Estimate of the valuation of the amenity. Can we receive that kind of information?
There's numbers here for,
But we have
There's a big hole in it,
Yeah.
I'm saying.
big hole where,
Yeah.
in what? Explain.
Alex, is there?
Thank you, through the chair. Just to clarify, are you speaking about the land donation or the full benefits
Whole-
package?
The whole value of the amenity that includes, like, I'm wondering how much value we're missing as far as the total number for the value of the amenity as a result of not valuing the affordable housing.
I think Director Nita may have more to add, but certainly we can come forward with some more information at the time of second reading around that, and we can start to look at what the valuation is of the proposed land donation as well. So we have some more numbers around that. We just don't have them developed at this point in time, but I'm sure that's something we could take a look at.
So then I would make a resolution that we direct staff to provide a valuation estimate of the affordable housing and the land contribution.
I think we have a motion on the floor right now, don't we?
This is an amendment.
Is it an amendment to that motion? No, okay.
by what time, Chair?
I think in line with the rest of it, second reading, yeah.
I'll second it.
Yeah, I was just looking for these numbers, sorry.
There's other numbers, just not the valuation of the affordable.
So you've made a motion then that you want these numbers brought forward before second reading or during?
Same track, same process. It'll really inform my decision, and I'd like to speak to it if there's a seconder.
I seconded it.
Okay. I would just say, I'm not convinced, as I said earlier, that this is the right amenity. And so understanding the valuation, I think, is really important as we think through how should the existing residents benefit from the added density in their community. So I'm interested in the valuation of the amenity and how it's going to benefit the residents who live in Wedgwoods right now.
Okay, so moved and seconded.
I'll speak to it. I'm supportive of this. I think I think quantifying these things as best we can is important. I think the report went a long way to address that, and this is a gap. There's a lot of variables here, so I understand that you know, that they may, you know, move over time, but some general understanding of what that is would be helpful, especially with considering this as an amendment.
Okay, moved and seconded. Everybody's had their kick at the can here. Moved and seconded. Call the question. All in favor? Opposed? Motion carried.
Now speaking to the amended motion. You probably have speakers now.
Go ahead.
I thought I was behind people, but I will speak to it. I just say I'm supportive of it, but I'm primarily supporting it to see what we get back through the process. And again, I'm not convinced that this is the right amenity and hopeful that what we get back can really help us understand how to make this a better place to live. Because that's what I hope this project does. I agree with something that was said earlier. There's a lot to like here. And so it's an interesting puzzle that we're dealing with right now is how do you move forward what you like, but ensure that you get benefits that that serve the people who live there.
Yeah, I'm not planning to change my vote at this point, but hearing my colleagues, I'm expecting this may pass, and I just wanted to highlight a couple other things that I would have questions about at second reading. Because I will keep an open mind and want to reconsider, but the one piece, understanding the rationale of the difference between stratas is important. I think in other contexts, I have looked to approve things as part of one strata, sort of similar finishings and so on for the market and below market and so on. So if something different is proposed here, I'd want to understand those differences. I had thought we had recently approved a policy on not approving properties that were well or didn't have waste treatment systems. And I don't recall exactly, so just clarity if we do have a policy for new development on that. And then just a little more information or confirmation on the fire service, because to my mind, you're dealing now with a busy highway and crossing that. It's not clear to me that it's just a simple incremental unit change in the price. So just some confirmation around that would be helpful as well. Thank you.
Any other comments, questions? Okay, thank you very much. Let's move on.
Well, I guess.
Jack's been asking so many questions.
All right.
Okay, call the question, all in favor? Opposed, motion carried. Opposed? Okay.
Chair, I need to step out
Take
to
care of that.
attend to my 3 o'clock.
How long are we going to that?
I don't, 4 o'clock?
We get $1,000 if we go 1 minute
I
past
think we should
4.
go later.
That's right.
We can't go later.
It's not against somewhere.
We can't.
Metro van.
You can't.
Exactly, but it's if your meeting goes over 4 hours. Over our live stream. On the health.
Jack and I can't go
Remember.
past 4. Just so.
None of us can because the
No.
regional district can't
Let's
afford
take
it.
a 5-minute quick stretch. And we'll be back here at 25 to 4.
And where are
I'd
we?
like to pull it
Yeah,
up.
what do you?
521 municipal affairs, housing community affairs, preparing for potential drought conditions.
Okay, so you want to pull that out?
Yeah.
So where will that go?
And where do we put that?
Sorry.
CFA 11.5.
11.5?
5P1.
Yeah.
11.5.
Okay, yes.
Right.
Okay, you're okay with that then, Chris? That's it? Good. Okay, 6, business arising.
Oh, good, you guys vote.
Oh, sorry. Moved and seconded, call the question, all in favor, opposed, motion carried. Now we're on to business arising from the minutes. I don't believe there's any. Committee reports and recommendations. 7.1, Electoral Area Directors Committee recommendation of March 11th, 2025. 7.11, request for decision, SLRD sign bylaw number 1885, 2025.
I'm with that.
Pardon?
I have a question on this one.
Yep.
Just wondering how, just clarity, and I think it was explained before, but how this interacts with provincial sign rules and municipal sign rules when there's multiple jurisdictions. How does this interact?
Thank you through the chair. So this applies to the SLRD only. We did consult sign bylaws from other municipalities to kind of come up with some of these guidelines. In terms of provincial regulations, we do defer any signs near the highway to MOTI, so one of the additions to this bylaw is to say that they have to comply with any sort of MOTI regulations if they're within a certain distance. And because MOTI regulations always change, we didn't put like specific numbers in there in case that changes in the future.
Lord,
Under 4.2.1A, the election signs are limited to one sign per dwelling unit. Does that differ from election BC? Like, is that on election BC rules?
Yeah, you see properties with so many signs.
Because election BC rules have their own election rules about signs. So does this differ from theirs?
yeah,
Through the chair, it was under my impression that we are the authority that regulates all types of signs, including election signs. I'm not 100% certain on that one.
Okay.
any other questions? You want to move this, Vivian?
I've already moved it.
Oh, you've already moved it.
Yeah.
Oh, I missed it. And Vivian's gonna second it then.
Sure.
Okay, and can we do both outs at the same time? No? Okay. This would be for the first dot, moved and seconded. Call the question, all in favor, opposed, motion carried.
I'll move the second one.
Okay. And Vivian's gonna second it. Thank you. Moved and seconded, call the question, all in favor, opposed, motion carried. Seven point two.
She's running.
Policy Development and Review Committee meeting recommendations of April 2nd, 2025. Request for a decision, review of the draft code of conduct bylaw number 1888, 2025.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Call the question, all in favor, opposed, motion carried. Point three, Electoral Area Directors Committee recommendations of April 9th, 2025. Request for decision, Electoral Area C zoning bylaw amendment, DL 2247 comprehensive development zone. We just did that.
We can, there's a comment here.
There's a
Yeah.
comment.
Yeah, this one can just be received because we dealt with it previously.
Motion to please.
Second.
Thank you. Move the second and call the question, all in favor, opposed, motion carried.
I'd be really happy with 7.3.2.
I'll second
Lori's gonna second.
Receiving agent.
And also, yeah, thank you staff for helping me with this. Just in time for me to say thank you.
And I say thank you.
Okay, moved and seconded. Call the question, all in favor, opposed, motion carried. Bylaws, 8.1, request for decision. Adoption of Britannia Beach Sewage Collection and Treatment Service Establishment Bylaw number 950-2005. Amendment bylaw number 1898, 2025.
Move that.
Moved and seconded. Call the question, all in favor?
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Oh.
Boy, to work for.
Did you get that? Yeah.
Yes. Thank you.
Request for decision, electoral area C.
We've done this.
8.2.
Motion to receive.
We just know it's on me.
Yeah.
Motion to receive, forget that.
Okay.
Staff report on business, CAO verbal update.
Hi,
May the 25th. May
2025.
Yeah, or two.
Hi, everyone. Heather Paul, CAO SLRD. Great to be here. Just a notice that we will be requiring or requesting a motion on this. Further to the board's resolution on February 26th, which directed staff to organize a one-day board tour in the spring of 2025 in collaboration with area directors. I'm pleased to share the update that the following two planning meetings, the area directors have agreed to the spring 2025 board tour should take place Thursday, May 29th, 2025 in Area C. While the detailed itinerary will be shared with the board ahead of time, general overview is the regular board meeting would take place here as usual with an aim to wrap up business at 4 p.m. At which point we will be going to the Pemberton transfer station for a scheduled tour at 5 p.m. The site is open to the public at that time and giving the board a chance to see the facility and interact with any community members using the site. There would then be a personal time before regrouping for dinner that evening. The next morning, Thursday, May 29th, tour would start with coffee and food at Pemberton Administrative Office, then should depart no later than 8 a.m.
Sorry, this office here?
This office,
Oh, okay,
yeah.
so-
From there, the board and some staff will caravan north for a tour of Interject's facilities in Area C. This will be a great opportunity to see some of the local industry in action and take the area's impressive views in. The tour will be expected to wrap up with everyone returning to the Pemberton Administrative Office right here in Astor Street between 5 and 5:30 p.m. The request, if the board is in agreement, that the following resolution be recommended, that the SLRD Spring 2025 board tour will be scheduled for May 25 to 2025 in Area C.
Yeah, so
Moved and seconded.
Yeah.
Okay, moved and seconded, call the question, all in favor, opposed, motion carried. We're on the way.
Yeah, we're good.
Right.
Yeah.
Just want to let you know, I unfortunately will be hopefully coaching a BC High School Boys Rugby Tournament. So
You get me in for both days?
Hopefully we're winning both days.
So your alternate will join us then? Yeah, okay.
No,
That's-
Outside, it's fire truck.
We're not our votes way.
it sounds like our own.
No, it's outside.
Okay.
So I will be there.
If everyone has a moment. I just want everyone to note that calendar holds have been sent to all members of the SLRD board for the following C2C meetings, community to community meetings. Lucontual Regional Gathering is on Friday, May 23rd. There is a backup date if there is cultural protocol required to postpone it, and that is Friday, June 6th. Squamish is going to be hosting it this year. We give great thanks to them. It'll be held at their administrative building, which is called Calacum. It's about 75 to 90-minute drive from the SLRD to Pemberton, so vehicles are being reserved. Exact timing will be determined. We hope to be done, start at 9:30, done at 3 p.m. We should ask people to arrive here no later than 8 a.m. Northern Statlium C2C meeting, Friday, May 30th. The Cliclet is the host community again this year, and this meeting will take place at the Uclumet Spiritual Center, the same place as last year. Exact timing is to be determined, but we anticipate begin at 9:30, and the program will run until 3 p.m. Of course, coffee, tea, and snacks will be provided and lunch at both events. More details and agendas will be coming closer to date. For planning purposes, this is why it's being brought. We ask everyone to RSVP as soon as possible. You may contact directly the executive assistant for the CAO for that. Please, we're recommending the following resolutions so that we can reimburse directors for their C2C meetings at the recommendation. And that is that any of the board directors that attend one or both of the community gatherings scheduled for May 23rd, Lucontual, or May 30th, the Northern Squamish-Lillooet SLRD meetings, are authorized for reimbursement of eligible expenses at the rates described in the SLRD remuneration bylaw number 1501-2016.
Could you say again where that first meeting is? I didn't catch the
Yeah,
location.
it's Squamish, so it's just about, it's about a 75 to 90-minute drive north of this right here,
From here.
from here.
Down Lower Lake, towards
Beautiful,
Harrison Lake.
And that's the 23rd.
that is the 23rd.
And then the 30th one is,
May 30th is in Lillooet, so yeah.
Moved and seconded. Okay, call a question, all in favor, opposed, motion carried. So that would be for both of them then?
Yeah, just carry on up. Thank you, everyone. And other than that, nothing else to report from the CAO's servo. And thank you everyone for your time.
9.2 information report, quarterly development applications report.
Motion to receive the.
Oh, yeah.
Motion to receive the CAO report.
Okay, moved and seconded. Call a question, all in favor, opposed, motion carried.
I'll move receipt of the information report,
I'll second that.
quarterly development application.
Okay, moved and seconded, any questions? Call a question, all in favor, opposed, motion carried. Request for 9.3, request for decision, form, character and conservation development permit number 279 Oliver's Landing at Furry Creek Phase 4.
Good morning, good afternoon, I should say. My name is Claire Dewar, I'm a senior
Yeah.
planner.
I don't know.
Hope you're okay. Yeah. Good. What's happening? I'll start again. This is great. Good afternoon. My name is Claire Dewar. I'm a senior planner at the Squamish-Lillooet Regional District. I will give a brief presentation on the request for decision report regarding the form and character conservation development permit number 279, which is for Oliver's Landing at Furry Creek in Phase 4. So just to clarify, form, character, and conservation development permit applications involving buildings and structures with a gross floor area of greater than 500 meters square require board approval. And then a background for the development permit application and project. This is the final phase 4 development at Oliver's Landing in Furry Creek, consisting of 5 duplexes and 2 townhouses for a total of 16 units. Oliver's Landing currently consists of 56 duplex units that were developed in the 1990s. With the addition of the 16 units proposed, the subject application, under the subject application, the development will consist of 72 units at build out, which is provided for under the current zoning. And the application states that the built form and citing of the proposed application are following the vision.
May I just interrupt? I'm thinking I should declare a conflict on this.
Okay.
Because I live in Oliver's Landing and this development is going to be right behind my house. So.
Okay.
I'll leave.
Enjoy the sun, Tony, I'll come find you.
I'll just yell at you.
Yeah, I'll go get, no, I'll go get him.
No.
So as the application states, the built form and citing of the proposed application are following the vision of a luxury waterfront community with immediate access to the trail system and shoreline. Just going to speak to what some of the site development includes, being the extensive landscaping featuring fire smart, native and drought tolerant species, a swale to manage stormwater runoff, pocket urban agriculture area with planters, storage box, bench, community gathering seating area, pedestrian connectivity to beaches, a waterfront dock paths, forest trails, golf pathways, to the existing Oliver's Landing Clubhouse and Recreation Center. The proposed development is being constructed to step code 3, and there is no fossil fuel combustion for heating, cooling, and cooking. EV charging is designed in all buildings. That's just a really high level snapshot. In terms of the form, character, and conservation development permit area objectives and guidelines, staff are in agreement with that the proposed development complies with the number of dwelling units, partial coverage, and maximum building height as set out in the zoning. Parking regulations are being met with the addition of a parking variance for 4 driveway aprons, which do not front onto the street, and staff are okay with this variance, given the garages are located to the side of the building, so there's no risk of them splaying out onto the sidewalks or roads. And that variance is directly embedded into the development permit. I won't get into the details around landscaping, pedestrian connectivity, solid waste, energy conservation grading unless there's specific questions. So I think I might just leave it there. I did want to just highlight though, in terms of regional impacts, as noted, the first 3 phases were completed 20 years ago. This completes the development of Oliver's Landing. Impacts will be largely local, with the expansion of the neighborhood connectivity and coastal flood protection works benefiting the broader neighborhood of Furry Creek, and particularly Oliver's Landing. And there may be also positive regional impacts as there is a need for more multifamily housing in Howe Sound East. Yeah. Happy to take any questions.
Any questions, anybody? Seems like everybody's happy. Okay. Jack's gonna second it.
Can I move them both at once, or are they two separate?
Both at once?
Yeah, great.
And whoa.
So it just wanna highlight, for me, this is weird to be approving luxury waterfront. Living in everything that we're dealing with now, but I understand this is very far along a process. This is, you know, pretty tight in terms of the permit and what's in our discretion here. So for that reason, I will be approving it, but it's just not certainly where my head space is in terms of planning and what we're working on as a region district.
Okay, moved and seconded. Call the question, all in favor?
Well, I just wanna thank you. I also want to recognize this feels, I know that there's our decision here is based on development permit, and I agree with staff's assessment that this does meet those requirements, so we should proceed, but I think that this is still relatively low density for the area, and I would have happily contemplated something in a different form than this, but that's not the decision. I'm cognizant that's not the decision we're being asked for here, so I will support, but it does leave me with a little bit of discomfort that I need to express as I'm doing so.
May I just respond to both these comments, and as I think staff has shared some of this, and what is interesting about this specific application is that these units are joining the existing strata that was built 20 years ago. So we have had really limited opportunities to even implement different areas around solid waste that we would be doing and will be doing in other parts of Furry Creek. But because there's an existing strata that these units are becoming part of, we have had to kind of find a bit of a, anyways, that's just some context.
Just in reply, my comments are certainly not to staff, identifying this or having those feelings as well. It's just the with the cards that we're dealt, there's still a level of discomfort, but I see that I know that we need to proceed given the regulatory environment we're existing in. So thank you for your work on this.
Anybody else? Okay, moved and seconded, call the question, all in favor, opposed, motion carried.
But we can tell Tony that it failed.
We got 30 minutes, so where are we going here? We got
Tony's favorite motion?
Motion three.
Motion reset.
That's your.
I don't think we're getting anywhere.
Do we need a motion to reset, or do we just get called?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
I always like to impose.
Carol? Yes. We need a motion.
Yeah, so you're making the motion, I'll second it, thank you very much. Jack wants to question it.
No, impose it.
Yeah, okay, oppose it. So anyways, thank you very much. Move second and call the question, all in favor.
So anyways.
We'll see everybody tomorrow morning at 9 a.m.